It's that card girl, and today we're going to be learning how to play the Gundam Card Game. We're going to be using Hans's deck since he's going to be playing in our demonstration today. Before we get too into everything, let's go over a few important things. There's some very specific rules in place for sleeves in Gundam, like the fact that your deck has to be sleeved in different sleeves than your resource deck and tokens. You can find the full rules in section 2.4.2 of the Tournament Rules Manual, which you can find on the Gundam Card Game's website. They also have a how to play movie and a searchable FAQ section on the website as well that's helpful, especially for card-specific questions. And let's also talk about what different types of cards there are. You have your main deck, which consists of a combination of 50 unit, pilot, command, and base cards. You can have up to 4 copies of a card number in your deck and up to 2 different colors in your deck. Then you'll have your resource deck, which consists of 10 resource cards. You're also going to need to have at least 1 EX resource card, but no more than 5. Hans has 5 for his deck because of the type of deck he runs. You'll also have 1 EX base that you'll start the game with. And then of course, you've got any tokens that are relevant to your deck. If you buy a pre-built starter deck, it's going to come with everything I've mentioned, although it will only have 1 EX resource card. Now, let's go ahead and let Hans get ready to play. He's going to be playing a 1v1 game, but there are a few other types as well, like 2v2 and Battle Royale. First thing you're going to want to do is shuffle your deck and get your resource deck in place. Once you're satisfied with your shuffling, you'll offer your opponent a chance to shuffle or cut your deck. You and your opponent will use some way to figure out who goes first, like rock, paper, scissors, a dice roll, a 100-yard dash, whatever you decide. After that's done, you'll draw your 5-card starting hand. Hans isn't quite happy with the hand he's got to start, so he's going to take his 1 mulligan. Now, Hans is going second for this game, so if his opponent decides to mulligan, they'll take theirs first. Gundam has a really fun mulligan because you place your starting hand at the bottom of your deck, draw your new 5-card hand, and then shuffle your deck. I like the way they chose to do this because you know you're not going to be getting those cards you did not want again. After everyone has their starting hand set, you set up your shields. You're going to take the top 6 cards from your deck and place them in your shield area face down. Your top card from your deck will be your bottom shield closest to you. The last step before the start of the game has both players placing their EX base in place at the top of their shield, and whoever is going second will get 1 EX resource in their resource area. Now everything is set and the game can begin. There are 5 phases to every turn, starting with, well, the start phase. During each player's first turn, there is nothing to do during this phase because it just has you set all the rested cards as active. The second phase is the draw phase, where you'll draw a card. Looks like Hans drew Overflowing Affection. The third phase is the resource phase, where you'll draw a resource card into your resource area. And then we have the main phase, which is when you can play cards from your hand, activate main phase effects, and attack. You can do those 3 things as many times as you want to and can, and in any order you want to. Looks like Hans has decided to go ahead and play Overflowing Affection. Now, this card is a level 2 1-cost card. Your level is determined by how many resource cards you have. So, since Hans has his EX resource and his resource card he drew at the beginning of this turn, that makes him level 2, so he can play any level 2 or lower card. Since it has a cost of 1, he'll rest 1 resource card to play it. With EX resource cards, once you use it to pay a cost, you remove it from the game. So, think of it as a temporary level up. As long as it's not spent, it gives you an extra level. Once you've spent it though, your level will change. You'd still keep any higher level cards you had played out, but would be a lower level for any cards you were going to play after. I'd suggest trying to wait a few turns to use your EX resource to pay a cost to keep that 1-up level advantage at the very start of the game if you're the second player. Now, let's talk about what kind of card Overflowing Affection is. This is a command card which is set in the middle of the left edge of the card. I've mentioned in our Dexplanation videos that some command cards can be used as pilots, but this is not one of those. So when not using a command card as a pilot, you'll get its effect and then it'll go to the trash. Hans did play this card at the right time because it is used during the main phase to let you draw 2 cards and then discard 1. He's through with his main phase now, so it's end phase time. The end phase has 4 steps. First is the action step, but we're going to talk about that a bit more when Hans has a unit attack. After the action step, any effect that activates at the end of your turn will resolve. Then, if you have 11 cards or more in your hand, you'll discard down to a 10-card hand. And lastly, any temporary effects for your turn lose their effect. And that's the end of Hans's first turn. Hans's opponent has gone, so it's time for his second turn. He'll start with the start phase, readying his cards back, then draw a card, this time getting the level 4 2-cost Gundam Heavy Arms. Next, he'll draw a resource card, and then we're in his main phase again. Since he's now level 3, he'll rest 2 resource cards to pay the 2 cost and play Gundam Lefrith, which is a blocker. A blocker that is unrested during your opponent's turn can be rested to make it the target of your opponent's attack instead of whatever they were planning to attack. Good call there, Hans. It's always helpful to have a blocker out, I think. It seems like that's all he wants to do this turn, so it's on to the end phase again, and then it's his opponent's turn. Now, we're towards the end of the match here, and it looks like things have been busy. We're actually coming back during Hans's opponent's turn, as his opponent is attacking Hans's base. However, Hans has a Zoort out, which is a blocker, so he's going to use that to change the target. Now, that unit didn't survive the attack, but it did keep his base from taking a hit, which is a good thing since it only has 1 health left. Now, I do want to make a quick note that while Hans and I use our damage dice to show how much health a unit has left, the proper way to do it is to show how much damage the unit has taken with them. Hans's opponent has attacked again, and this time they managed to take out Hans's base. He has 1 shield left, but it seems like his enemy has hit his shields again. When your opponent hits your shield, you'll look at the top card from your shield. If it does not have a burst effect, it'll go to the trash. If it does have a burst effect, you'll get that effect. And lucky for Hans, his last card in his shield area was a base. The burst effect for this card lets you deploy it or play it. Now, since Hans has deployed this card thanks to his burst effect, it activates the deploy effect. For this base, and most bases, when you deploy the base, you'll add 1 of your shields to your hand. However, Hans has no shields left. Now, when you have no bases and no shields left and your opponent hits your shield area, you'll lose. But deploying a shield and not being able to add a shield to your hand will not cause you to lose. And that was the end of Hans's opponent's turn, so now it's Hans's turn again. He'll start off by setting all his rested card to active for his start phase. Then he'll draw a card for the draw phase, and then add a resource card to his resources for the resource phase. And now it's time for Hans's main phase. He's realized this is probably going to be his last turn, so he's going to give it everything he's got. First thing he's going to do is start attacking. Remember, you can play a card, activate an activate main effect, and attack with a unit in whichever order you want, however many times you want to or can. His Wing Gundam Bird mode has 2 attack and 2 health, which is noted in the bottom corner of the card. Attack is the first number and health is the second. When a unit attacks, there are 5 steps to the attack. First is the attack step, where you'll rest the unit you're attacking with like Hans has here and say what your target is. You can target your enemy, which targets their base if they have one, and their shields if they do not, or a rested enemy unit unless you have an effect that lets you do otherwise. The second step in an attack is the block step, where the opponent can activate a blocker if they have one and want to, making it the new target of the attack. The third step is the action step. This is the step that also takes place during the end phase that I said I'd talk about later. Well, it's later now. During the action step, your opponent and you will take turns going back and forth playing command cards with the action effect or activating an activate action effect. The person whose turn it is will not go first during the action step. The back and forth will go until both players pass twice in a row. Then we move on to the damage step. The person whose turn it is will not go first during the action step. The back and forth will go until both players pass twice in a row. Then we move on to the damage step. When you attack an enemy unit, both the attack unit and the enemy unit take damage. So Hans's Wing Gundam Bird mode will deal 2 damage to the enemy unit if that's what he's attacking, and his unit will take damage equal to the enemy unit's attack. The damage the 2 units deal to each other happens simultaneously unless a card has First Strike. We talk about First Strike in our Starter Deck 4 video, so if you want to learn more about it, make sure to check out that video next. Now, Hans did just target an enemy unit with his attack, But if he had chosen to target the opponent instead, his Wing Gundam Bird Mode would have dealt its 2 damage to his opponent's base if they had one. If there was no base, then the first shield would have been taken out. In the official rules, they say to treat a shield as if it has 1 HP, but doing 2 or more damage will still only take out 1 shield. If his opponent had no base and no shields and Hans were to successfully attack his opponent, he would win the game. You know, I just realized that I never actually mentioned what has to happen for you to actually win the game. So there's 2 ways. Attacking your opponent for a direct hit like I just explained is one way to win. The other way you can win is if your opponent runs out of cards in their deck. Anywho, after the damage step during an attack is the last step, which is the end of battle step. This is just where the during this battle effect stops being an effect and the unit's attack ends. Now that Hans has finished that attack, which takes much less time normally during an actual game than it did for me to just explain everything, he's going to rest 3 resources and deploy his level 5 3-cost Gundam Sandrock. Now, this unit has 4 attack and 4 health alongside a deploy effect. Since it says may in the description, he could choose if he wanted to use the effect or not. Now, down on the bottom of the card by where it says link, it lets you know what the link pair pilot is for this unit. And this one happens to be Quattro, who Hans just so happens to have in his hand. He's going to pay 1 more resource to go ahead and pair that pilot to the unit. And Quattro is actually Peaceful Timber, one of the command cards that can be used as a pilot. By being paired to a unit, he adds both 1 attack and health to the Gundam, bringing it up to a 5/5 unit. Next, Hans pays another 3 resources to play the level 5 3-cost Gundam Heavy Arms, followed by paying another 1 resource to play the command card Simultaneous Fire as pilot Troa Barton, creating another link unit. Now, when you use a command card as a pilot, you do not get the effect of the command card, so Hans can't get the main phase effect letting him give a unit Breach 3. But, thanks to Troa being paired to Gundam Heavy Arms, Hans does get the Daring Pair effect from the unit if he destroys an enemy unit with battle damage. And, to top it off, the unit is now a 4 attack, 5 health unit. Hans wants to go ahead and play his level 4 2-cost Gundam Heavy Arms. He has 1 regular resource left, so I think it's finally time he spends some of those EX resources he's got. He rests 1 to play the unit, and then it's off the board. And since this is most likely Hans' last turn, he decides to go ahead and spend his remaining EX resource to pair Simultaneous Fire as pilot Troa to this unit as well. Which does let him get this unit's Daring Pair effect, giving this Gundam Heavy Arms Breach 3. And that means that when he attacks and destroys an enemy unit with this unit, he'll deal 3 damage to his opponent's base or take out their top shield. It's a punch with extra oomph. Now, all 3 units Hans played are link units because he paired them with a specific pilot mentioned as the link on the card. Any pilot can be paired with a unit, but if you match up a link pair, you get to attack with that unit on the turn it's played. Otherwise, the unit has to wait until the next turn to be able to attack. So, Hans is going to attack with everything he's got, starting with Wing Gundam. Since it only had 2 health left, it did not survive the attack, so the unit and paired pilot went to the trash. He attacks with his token blocker because, unless specified, blockers can still attack. It did its damage and went back off the board. Another attack by Hans with Gundam Lefrith, and now he has his 3 units he just played that he can still attack with thanks to pairing them with their link pilots. Unfortunately though, even with those last 3 attacks and the breach on Gundam Heavy Arms, he still did not make it through to the final hit on his opponent. Now, with nothing left to do during his main phase, it's on to the end phase. There's no action steps either player wants to take. Hans has no end of turn effects. Since he has no cards left in his hand, he doesn't need to discard down to 10 cards, and any temporary effects have now worn off. It's now Hans' opponent's turn. It's not looking good for Hans right now. His opponent attacks Hans' base for 4 damage, leaving it with 2 health. Now, Hans could have saved his blockers to help field that damage this turn, but he was hoping he had enough during his turn to win. Another hit takes out Hans' base entirely. And yep, 1 more attack from his opponent and they beat Hans. Better luck next time, Hans. Great game though. Now, there's quite a few different effects and nuances of this game we didn't get around to mentioning in this demonstration. Our Dexplanation videos do go over different cards' effects that were included in the cards from those decks, so if you picked up a starter deck and are wondering about a specific mechanic, check out the starter deck video we have and see if we've answered it. And please feel free to ask any questions you have down in the comments. We'll do our best to answer them for you. I've read pretty much all of the rules and most of the card FAQs on the Gundam website, so there's a good chance I'll know the answer. At the beginning, this game seemed very confusing to me, but as Hans and I played together, we got the hang of it. It seems a bit more complicated than it really is. I hope you've enjoyed our How to Play video and have come out of this understanding more about the game than you did going in. I could keep going on and waxing poetic about this TCG because I really do love and enjoy it, but I think you've listened to me yap enough for one video. Like, comment, subscribe, and tell your link pair about us. That Card Girl out!